Listeners, hello. The broadcast that deeply explores the truth. We are Deep Dive. Today is the first broadcast of a 10-part series. Today, we will start that historical first, beginning with our listeners.
Thank you. It's an absolute privilege to begin this journey today.
Yeah, we are so excited to get started. But listeners, before we get into the heavy details today, let our listeners imagine for a second the billions of dollars spent across the globe every single year.
Oh, easily billions.
Right. Spent on anti-aging creams, cutting-edge medical procedures, extreme biohacking, and even things like cryogenics.
Yes, freezing bodies. It is a massive industry.
Exactly. I mean, humanity as a whole seems entirely obsessed with extending the clock. People run on treadmills, they swallow endless supplements, undergo dangerous surgeries.
And all of it is driven by this singular, unyielding desire to just keep breathing for one more day.
Right. So the big question is, why are human beings wired this way? Why is there such a desperate universal panic when the clock starts running out?
It is a profound question.
It really is. And it's all because of the ultimate terrifying question tackled in today's broadcast material. Is death really the end of everything?
That is the core issue we are facing today.
So, for this entire deep dive, we are going to rigidly and clearly unpack what the text of the Bible actually says about human death, the immense fear surrounding it, and what waits on the other side.
And our overarching goal for this deep dive, and indeed for this entire 10-part series, is absolute clarity.
Clarity is key here.
Exactly. We are setting out to carefully, logically, and systematically break down exactly what the text of the Bible actually says.
No confusing jargon, right?
Right. The intention is that listeners of any background, regardless of age or prior knowledge, can fully understand the reality of the gospel without ever feeling overwhelmed by complex terminology.
Which is so important because these are heavy topics.
They are. We are not here to debate human philosophy or modern psychology. We are here to look at the foundational reality presented in the broadcast material.
I love that. And we are keeping it accessible from the very start. Because the broadcast material provided for today starts with something completely universal.
It grounds the discussion in everyday reality.
Yeah, to begin unpacking this monumental question about whether death is the end of everything, the author's video material draws our attention to a very well-known proverb.
Yes, the proverb about birth and death.
Right. There is an order to birth, but no order to death.
That is such a profound starting point. Let us really explore the reality of that proverb because it frames the entire human experience.
It really does. I mean, when human beings think about birth, there is a clear chronological line,
Absolutely. There is a distinct biological process. A mother experiences 9 months of pregnancy.
Yeah, there are trimesters. You have the baby showers.
Right. Families prepare nurseries, they buy clothes, they set up a predictable timeline. There is an expected order to how life enters the visible world.
It's a system. Society basically functions on this assumption of order.
It does.
Yeah.
And even as a person grows up, there is an assumed order.
Like going to school, getting a job, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, old age. People expect the timeline to hold steady.
But death completely shatters that chronological expectation.
It completely ignores the assumed order.
Entirely. It can come at any age. It can arrive completely unexpectedly without any warning signs whatsoever.
Which is terrifying. I mean, a person could be perfectly healthy, exercising daily, eating right, and suddenly, boom, their heart just stops.
Yes, or a tragic accident occurs out of nowhere.
And that unpredictable nature is precisely what makes the concept of death so terrifying to the human mind.
Exactly. Let us deeply analyze the psychological reality here. Why do humans instinctively avoid talking about death?
Oh, people hate it. It ruins the mood instantly.
Right. If a group of friends is having a joyful dinner and someone brings up the topic of their own mortality, the room immediately goes quiet.
Awkward silence.
People instantly change the subject. They use euphemisms.
Yeah, they say someone passed away or moved on rather than just saying they died.
Right. Why this massive linguistic gymnastics? It stems from a profound instinctual terror.
And that terror is firmly rooted in the widespread assumption that death is the absolute end of everything.
That is the core assumption driving the fear.
I mean, if someone believes that the moment their heart stops beating, their consciousness is simply wiped out forever, that is a horrifying prospect.
It means everything they built, everything they loved, all their memories simply evaporate into nothingness.
Into a permanent void. And the broadcast material highlights some extreme human reactions to this specific terror.
Yes, it gets incredibly visceral.
When people are faced with the immediate threat of death, say, in a sinking ship or a falling airplane.
Or a hospital room where the monitors are beeping frantically.
Exactly. Their reaction is so intense, the broadcast material mentions that individuals will offer to do absolutely anything just to survive.
It strips away all pride completely. A wealthy person facing imminent death will gladly trade every single penny in their bank account for just one more week of life.
Just a few more days, right?
A powerful executive will abandon their dignity and beg for their life.
People will make any promise. They'll give away all their earthly possessions.
And endured excruciating physical pain through invasive medical treatments, all for the chance to survive for a little bit longer.
It's a desperate primal clinging to this visible existence.
They cling to the edge of the cliff because they believe there is absolutely nothing but an endless, dark void underneath.
And because this terror is so unbearable, because staring into what people assume is a permanent void is psychologically breaking, humanity has historically invented various coping mechanisms.
Yes, attempts to manage the dread.
Right. And the author's video material introduces a fascinating historical context regarding ancient India.
Yes, the concept of reincarnation.
This historical context is vital for understanding human nature, isn't it?
It truly is. In ancient India, the concept of reincarnation emerged as a massive cultural and philosophical framework.
So what was the core belief there?
The core philosophical belief was that a person's earthly deeds would dictate their rebirth as another life form in the next life.
And this wasn't just a passing thought, right?
No, it became the foundation of entire societal structures.
Let us really think about why that idea took root so deeply. It's the idea that life does not just end, but it loops.
Instead of a hard stop, it is a circle.
Right.
Precisely. This concept was essentially born as an attempt to escape the overwhelming panic that comes with thinking death is a hard, final stop.
It's a psychological buffer.
Yes, by imagining a cycle of rebirth, humanity tried to soften the blow of mortality.
Because if a person believes they will just come back as an animal or a different person or even an insect, the edge of the cliff suddenly looks less intimidating.
It is no longer an absolute void.
Yeah.
The human brain vastly prefers an endless repetitive cycle over a permanent, unchangeable conclusion.
It protects against the terror of finality. But, okay, let's unpack this. Do these coping mechanisms actually work?
That is the critical question.
I mean, on paper, a philosophical loop sounds comforting. But when a person is actually lying in a hospital bed, feeling their breath failing, or facing a sudden tragedy on the highway, does a philosophical theory truly erase the visceral panic?
Does imagining a future rebirth stop someone from begging for their current life?
Exactly. Do they actually find peace?
The analysis in the broadcast material is quite clear on this point. No, they absolutely do not work.
They fail when it actually matters.
Despite all these elaborate philosophical attempts to escape the dread, the instinctual fear of death remains inherently wired into humanity.
So reincarnation or any other framework is just...
It is ultimately just a psychological Band-Aid placed over a gaping wound.
A Band-Aid over a wound. That's a great way to put it.
It might offer a momentary distraction during a peaceful afternoon of philosophical debate, but in the face of actual impending physical death, the primal terror takes over completely.
The survival instinct kicks in.
Sociologists and psychologists might attempt to analyze and explain away this fear using human frameworks, pointing to evolutionary survival instincts.
But those explanations fall utterly short of addressing the root cause.
They do. Because if it were just an evolutionary survival instinct, humans would simply accept the end of their biological function with cold rationality.
Like a machine powering down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But instead, there is this profound existential horror.
So if none of those human coping mechanisms work, if reincarnation and philosophical theories fail to stop the panic, then we have to stop looking at psychology.
We must look deeper.
We have to start looking at the foundational root cause. Why are human beings wired this way in the first place?
And that is where the broadcast material directs us to look at the text of the Bible.
To get the actual answer.
Yes. To understand the actual origin of death, the broadcast material directs us to the creation account found in Genesis chapter 3 within the text of the Old Testament.
And this is where the paradigm completely shifts for our listeners.
It really does. What is fascinating here is that the text of the Bible reveals death was not a natural part of the original design.
Wait, really? Not a natural part?
No, death was not supposed to happen. It is not an inherent biological necessity in the way God originally structured things.
Okay, then what is it?
According to the text of the Bible, human death is the direct, unavoidable result of human sin.
Let us make sure our listeners fully grasp that, because it flips everything we are taught on its head.
Completely opposite of modern biology.
Right. We are taught in biology class that death is just the natural conclusion of cellular decay.
Just a biological reality.
But the text of the Bible says death is actually a consequence. It is a penalty.
A direct result.
And to back that up, the broadcast material points to the text of the New Testament, specifically Romans chapter 3 and chapter 6.
Those are crucial chapters.
They confirm two massive realities.
Yeah.
First, that absolutely all people have sinned, every single human being.
There are no exceptions whatsoever.
Second, the required price, or the wage for that sin, is death.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a rigid, unbreakable cause and effect relationship established in the text of the Bible.
Cause and effect. Sin and death.
Death is a universal symptom of a universal condition, and that condition is sin.
So because every single human being sins,
Death comes to absolutely everyone without exception. The logic is impenetrable.
a bill comes due.
Exactly. Sin demands a wage, and that wage is physical death. It is a transaction that cannot be canceled.
But let me push back a bit here, or at least ask the question many listeners might be thinking right now.
Of course, go ahead.
If death is just a wage or a debt being called due, why is it so unpredictable and chaotic?
That is a common question.
Usually if someone owes a debt, they get a bill in the mail. It says, your payment is due on the 15th of next month. It has a timeline, it has order.
A predictable schedule.
Right, but we just established earlier with the proverb that death has no order. So how does an unpredictable, chaotic event act as a systematic wage?
That is an excellent question. The lack of order in death does not negate its function as a wage.
It doesn't.
No, rather, it amplifies the severity of the sin it pays for.
Oh, wow.
The text of the Bible does not promise a predictable payment schedule. The law of sin simply states that the wage is death.
So the debt is just always there.
The moment a human being sins, the debt is incurred. The account is instantly in the red.
Instantly.
The unpredictable timing of death simply means the debt collector can show up at any given moment without any prior announcement.
That is terrifying.
The lack of order is part of the terrifying reality of living under the penalty of sin.
Let me offer an analogy to help our listeners visualize this concept of the wage based on the broadcast material.
Please do.
Let our listeners imagine a debt that every single human being is born with. The moment they take their first breath, this account is open.
The ledger begins.
And throughout life, they actively add to this debt every single day through their actions.
Stacking the debt higher.
The critical, unchangeable detail about this specific debt is the accepted currency.
The payment method.
Right. A person might try to pay off their life's debt by doing good deeds, donating to charity, or trying to be a highly moral person.
Trying to balance the scales.
But those things are like trying to pay a multi-million-dollar mortgage with pieces of colorful monopoly money.
It just doesn't work.
The ledger does not accept that currency. The only accepted currency for payment when the account is finally called due is physical death.
That is absolute.
There's no negotiating the payment, no declaring bankruptcy, and no alternate currency accepted. Death strictly pays the debt of sin.
That analogy perfectly encapsulates the precise logic provided in the broadcast material.
It really makes it clear.
Every human owes this wage because every human has sinned. Therefore, every human will inevitably die to settle the ledger of their flesh.
It is an absolute certainty governed by the law outlined in the text of the Bible.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean? This raises the absolute biggest question of our deep dive today.
The turning point.
If death pays the price of sin, is that it? Is the debt settled and the story over?
Is it the end?
Is death actually the end of everything? Because if physical death perfectly pays the physical wage of sin, a logical person might conclude that the transaction is complete and the individual simply ceases to exist.
And that is exactly what humanity hopes is true, despite their fear.
Right. They hope it's just lights out.
They hope it is just a final sleep. But this is where we reach the most pivotal, monumental moment in the broadcast material.
The turning point for our listeners.
The author's video material introduces a crucial verse from the text of the New Testament, specifically from Hebrews chapter 9.
Okay, what does it say?
The text of the Bible states, "It is appointed for men to die once, but after this, the judgment."
Wow. Let us focus heavily on the grammar there.
Grammar is essential.
The author's video material places a massive, undeniable emphasis on a single word in that sentence.
The conjunction but.
The conjunction but in this passage changes the trajectory of human destiny. It is absolutely critical.
The text of the Bible first affirms the fixed fact we just discussed. The appointment with death is unavoidable.
Every human will die. The debt will be paid.
Exactly. But human existence does not conclude at the grave.
That conjunction shatters everything.
It shatters the pervasive human assumption that death is the final chapter. It completely annihilates the idea that death is a permanent void or a peaceful sleep.
So death is followed by something else.
Death is immediately followed by something else. It is followed by an absolute, terrifying judgment.
It changes the entire architecture of how we view mortality.
It is a profound paradigm shift.
Death is not a brick wall that a person crashes into and ceases to be. It is just a doorway.
A threshold.
A threshold that every human must cross. And what waits on the other side of that threshold is not a void, and it is not a cyclical reincarnation loop.
It is judgment.
This brings a staggering, terrifying weight to the present moment.
The urgency is immense.
The broadcast material issues a very heavy warning right here. Preparation for this judgment can only happen while our listeners are still breathing in this visible world.
This raises an incredibly important point about the urgency of the present moment.
Because we don't know how much time we have.
Think back to the proverb we discussed at the very beginning of the broadcast. There is no order to death.
Sudden death is a tragic, frequent reality of the human experience.
Yes, and many people operate under the dangerous assumption that death is a distant event.
They think it is something that will happen decades from now.
Perhaps after a long illness in their old age, giving them plenty of time to reflect on their life and get their affairs in order.
They think they have a long runway before they hit the threshold.
But the reality is that car accidents happen every single day.
Massive heart attacks happen to people who seem perfectly healthy. Natural disasters strike without warning.
If a person faces a sudden, unexpected death, the broadcast material makes it explicitly clear that they are instantly thrust into this judgment with zero preparation time.
Instantly. The second their heart stops, they cross the threshold completely unready.
There is no waiting room. There is no time to study for the test once the test has begun.
That is so heavy.
The harsh, unyielding reality stated in the broadcast material is that once a person breathes their last breath, there are no second chances whatsoever.
The ledger is closed permanently.
Regret on the other side of death is entirely, absolutely useless.
If someone wakes up immediately after death, realizes with absolute horror that the judgment is real, and wishes they had prepared while they were alive, it is too late.
It is far too late. The time to prepare is exclusively now, while the heart is still beating, while the lungs are still drawing breath.
That is a deeply chilling realization. If our listeners are hearing this right now, this very moment, this exact second, is the window of opportunity.
The window is open right now.
Once the window closes, it locks from the outside, which leads directly to our next major area of investigation.
A very logical follow-up.
If this terrifying judgment is coming, and it is an absolute certainty according to the text of the Bible, why are we so blind to it?
Why the massive blind spot?
Why is humanity so universally terrified of the physical end of life, the biological stopping of the heart, rather than being terrified of the eternal judgment that follows immediately after?
It seems completely backward.
It is like being terrified of the door itself, rather than the fire blazing in the room behind the door. Why is our fear so misplaced?
To answer that critical question of misplaced fear, the author's video material turns back to the text of the New Testament.
Okay, where specifically?
Specifically, Hebrews chapter 2, verses 14 and 15.
What does that passage reveal?
This passage explains the precise reason why the Son of God, Jesus, came to earth in flesh and blood. And hidden within this explanation is the identity of the culprit behind humanity's immense blindness.
Before we name that culprit, the author's video material points out a fascinating linguistic detail for our listeners.
This detail is really important to grasp.
In this specific passage in Hebrews chapter 2, the words translated into our language as death or dying all come from the exact same Greek original word.
There's a crucial insight from the broadcast material.
The author emphasizes that these words must be read consistently to truly understand the full picture being painted by the text of the New Testament.
We cannot separate the physical act of dying from the conceptual power of death.
So, linguistic consistency is paramount here.
It is. When we read the text of the Bible with that unified, consistent understanding of the Greek original word, we uncover a startling truth.
And what is that truth? Who is the culprit?
The text states that the devil, also referred to as Satan, holds the power of death.
Now let's explore that carefully because it sounds like something out of a medieval painting.
It can sound like folklore if we aren't careful.
The power of death. The text of the Bible says the devil holds this power. What does that actually look like in practice?
The text clarifies that the devil does not use this power simply as an executioner.
He's not just swinging a scythe.
No, he uses this power of death as a psychological and emotional weapon.
He weaponizes it.
He uses it to make humans absolutely, paralyzingly terrified of physical death. He weaponizes mortality against humanity.
And the consequence of that weaponized fear is devastating.
Utterly devastating.
The text points out a tragic result. Because of this intense, all-consuming fear of physical death, humans are forced into a lifetime of slavery.
That is the exact word used in the text. Slavery.
They become completely chained to their earthly existence.
They live as slaves, just trying to survive.
Trying to extend their physical lives by any means necessary, they spend their entire lives making a living from day to day, perfectly trapped by the fear of the end.
It is a profound, masterful manipulation.
So the distraction is the point.
Humanity is kept so incredibly busy running away from the fear of physical death, dodging illnesses, accumulating wealth for security, exercising to extend their lifespan, that they never look up to see the actual judgment waiting beyond it.
It is the ultimate misdirection trick.
Like a magician?
Yeah, it is like a magician waving a brightly colored cloth in their left hand, so the audience completely misses what is happening in the right hand.
A perfect analogy.
Humanity gets so consumed with just surviving the physical world that they never even think to look up at the judgment waiting right behind the door.
They are completely consumed by the present.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and we need to push into the mechanics of this for our listeners.
Let us dive deeper.
Does the devil literally have the power to kill people? Is he acting like a grim reaper, walking around the earth and terminating human lives one by one to wield this power of death?
That is a very common misconception.
Because if the devil is the one killing people, then humans are just helpless victims of a cosmic hitman.
That is a vital distinction to make, and it completely reshapes how we view this scenario.
How does the broadcast material answer this?
The broadcast material answers this by looking at the traits of the devil, as explained by Jesus in the text of the New Testament, specifically in John chapter 8.
What does John chapter 8 say about his traits?
In that passage, Jesus identifies two defining characteristics of the devil. He is driven by greed, and he is the father of lies.
The father of lies. That completely shifts how we understand his power.
He is not a physical hitman. He is a deceiver.
Connecting John chapter 8 back to Hebrews chapter 2 reveals the master deception.
The puzzle pieces fit together perfectly.
The devil does not actively kill people. As we established earlier, God's law regarding sin handles the appointment of death.
Death is the wage of sin.
The devil does not need to kill humans. Humans are already dying because of their own sin.
Precisely. Instead, the devil lies about death.
So his power over death is entirely 100% based on deception.
He controls humanity's perception of death, not the biological mechanism of it.
So what is the specific lie? How does the father of lies use deception to enslave the entire human race?
The broadcast material unveils the deception clearly.
Or what is the grand lie?
The lie is this: death is the absolute end. There is nothing after it. Therefore, survival in this physical world must be achieved at all costs, because this visible life is all there is.
When humans swallow that lie, the ripple effect on human behavior is catastrophic.
It corrupts everything.
Believing that this visible life is the entirety of existence, humans become infected with endless greed.
And we see this everywhere in society.
They desperately try to fill themselves with temporary things, money, status, physical comfort, career achievements, luxury items, but they are never, ever truly satisfied.
The void cannot be filled by temporary things.
Think about it like a hostage situation.
Oh, this is a good comparison from the material.
Let our listeners imagine a hostage situation where the doors to the prison aren't actually locked.
They could leave at any time.
But the captor has convinced the hostages that stepping outside the door will cause them to instantly evaporate into nothing.
The lie becomes the lock.
The captor doesn't need to physically tie them to the floor. The lie itself is the cage.
That is exactly how the devil wields the power of death.
Not as a grim reaper with a scythe, but as a warden of a psychological prison.
If the devil can convince humans that the room they are currently in this physical world is the entire universe, and stepping out the door is annihilation,
They will fight to the death over the crumbs on the floor of the room.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the slavery mentioned in the text of the Bible.
Because if this visible world is all there is, people naturally think they have to consume as much of it as possible before the clock runs out.
They become willing slaves to the daily grind.
They chase worldly success, they exhaust themselves accumulating temporary wealth, and they stress over earthly security.
Entirely because they have been deceived into thinking this brief, unpredictable physical existence is their only reality.
This is the ultimate trap described in the broadcast material.
It is a horrific, brilliantly executed endgame.
Humans live their entire lives completely distracted by this earthly greed.
They die believing that the moment their heart stops, it is simply the peaceful end of their existence.
And then suddenly, they wake up facing God's absolute, inescapable judgment, completely unprepared.
It is an ambush. An eternal ambush set up by a lifetime of lies.
And that raises the darkest question of all. Why?
The motive.
What is the dark motivation behind this grand deception? Why would the devil go to such elaborate lengths to weave this lie and deceive all of humanity?
The broadcast material makes the motive explicitly clear, and it is chilling.
It is.
The devil himself is already destined to face a terrifying, horrific judgment and punishment.
His fate is sealed.
His goal is not merely to cause temporary earthly suffering. His ultimate goal is to drag as many human beings as possible into that exact same terrifying punishment.
By blinding humanity to the coming judgment, using the lie that death is the end, he ensures they will wake up completely unready.
Thus sharing his terrible fate. He wants company in his punishment.
It is a malicious, calculating strategy born out of absolute hatred for humanity.
And understanding this strategy is the key to escaping it.
That is incredibly sobering. As we begin to wrap up this deep dive, we have to pause and reflect on the profound emotional weight behind the broadcast material we have examined today.
The author's intent is very powerful.
The author didn't create this video just to share interesting theological facts or historical context about ancient India.
No, it is much deeper than that.
The broadcast material was forged out of a desperate, earnest love.
The author is terrified that even one of their loved ones or any of our listeners today might fall into this trap.
The thought of someone waking up on the other side of death, beating their chest in agonizing, endless regret,
Realizing they were entirely deceived by the devil for their whole life.
chasing temporary money and status while ignoring the eternal judgment, it is a heartbreak the author is desperately trying to prevent.
It is a profound warning given out of genuine care for the souls of those listening.
Let us briefly synthesize the logical chain we have uncovered today from the text of the Bible so our listeners hold it clearly in their minds.
It operates as a strict sequence. First, human sin brings about inevitable physical death as a wage.
Second, that physical death is not the end, but rather a threshold that brings inevitable judgment.
Third, the devil weaponizes the fear of death, using lies to blind humanity to this coming judgment, thereby enslaving people to worldly greed and distraction.
Therefore, the unavoidable conclusion is that humanity must wake up from this grand deception.
They must use the fleeting, unpredictable moments of their living breath to prepare for what comes after the door.
We must prepare. There is no alternative. And that naturally leads us to look ahead to our next meeting.
This is only the first step.
This is only the first broadcast in our 10-part series. Now that our listeners know exactly why they must prepare for the judgment that follows death, the next deep dive will unpack exactly how the text of the Bible says we can actually make that preparation.
We have exposed the trap, and next time we will look at the escape route.
We have established a diagnosis today. In the next broadcast, we will carefully examine the cure provided in the text of the Bible.
But before we conclude, there's a lingering thought that must be considered by everyone hearing these words.
Yes, a final provocative thought to leave with our listeners as they go about their day.
Consider this carefully.
If everything the text of the Bible says about death and the subsequent judgment is absolute truth, if the door is real, and the judgment behind it is waiting, what is the actual value of all the temporary things our listeners are frantically chasing in this visible world today?